back in Los Angeles, rested, ready for action. I'm not sure if you followed my scopes from abroad that I was traveling in Italy for the last 6 weeks. I was working on a project for a producer in Los Angeles, working remotely, which is part of the wonderful part about securing a job as a screenwriter, because you can work anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection and a laptop. Which is my my rant today is about the spec screenplay. I just received the Scoggins report for 2015, and it doesn't look good, folks, for us. There have only been 46 spec sales this year through the end of August, and that's 30% lower than the average, and it's the second lowest spec sales in 7 years. So things don't look good right now in Hollywood for the spec screenplay. Last year, 90 spec screenplays sold in 2014, and in 2013, 124. Now again, the 46 specs that sold this year so far, 7 originally went out last year. So they lingered and then they sold. So 46 actually would be 39 specs, but 46 total. Anyway, the numbers are absurd. And you have to put it in perspective when you're writing your spec screenplays, I think, because you will be destroyed every time out if you think that the spec you're writing is going to sell. You have to believe it, but the reality is that it becomes a writing sample, a working writing sample for you. You can't believe that every spec that you create is going to sell. In fact, most will not sell. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to tell you the reality of the business. And I used to think this way, that every time I put words on paper that a spec would sell, of course it would sell. And the harsh reality happened when I realized that most of my specs would not sell. In fact, I've sold only one spec in my career. But the important part of that fact is that the one spec that I sold opened the door for assignment work, which is the bread and butter. Ciao! Is the bread and butter of working screenwriters. It's not spec sales. You may sell a spec or two your whole career, but then work on assignment jobs for the rest of your career. The ciao, grazie. The spec, the assignment that I'm working on now that I was able to work remotely is my 14th assignment. So one spec opened the door for 14 assignments, and I'm perfectly happy with that because, you know, I have written other specs. Yes, of course I have in my career, but now I have to be very, very careful and with my time, because time, when you're working as a working screenwriter, your time is worth money. So if you're going to be working on a spec, it has to be something that you really, really love, and it's a passion project. Otherwise, because you're too busy writing, screenplays for producers. So I think when you sit down to write your spec, you have to put it in perspective. See how that spec fits into the bigger picture of your entire career, and use the spec as a tool, as a calling card, which what it is. It's a calling card, and you have to make sure that your spec is not read before it's ready. Don't be too eager to get material out there just for the sake of getting material out, because you feel like you're missing, the party, or you're missing, the horses have left, the stable, and you're still behind. Stay behind until you're ready. Stay in your writing cave until you truly are ready to compete. Because many times, and this has happened to me early in my career, I thought that I was ready to compete, and I really wasn't. Truly, I was not. And so what happens is you get out too early with projects, you start to pitch to companies, you may find a way in, but you start to see rejection and failure more than any success, and you have to think, wow, am I really ready to get out there and compete? And maybe you aren't. That's part of the reality of stepping back and being humbled by the craft and humbled by the business, and realizing that it may not be ready. You may not be ready with one screenplay. Of course it's not. No one's ready with one screenplay. You don't even know your writing style. with one screenplay. After 3 or 4, yes, maybe. And 3 or 4 drafts of each one of those screenplays, sure. And like I said, it was my 5th spec that was optioned for a year and a half by the company, developed, and then it was purchased and produced. And after production, that company then hired me for assignment work, and that's what opened the door to a career. So not every spec you write is going to sell. And like I mentioned, the 2015 scorecard from the Scoggins report this year says that there have only been 46 spec sales up until this point in 2015. Last year there were 90. So actually it's 30% lower than the average, and the second lowest spec sale year in the last 7 years. So right now Hollywood is buying fewer and fewer specs because they're developing their tentpole projects, as you can see, as the Avengers, as another Spider-Man, as another Planet of the Apes, as another Star Wars. These are projects that they own. These are not spec screenplays. These are assignment jobs. My friend and dear close friend has written and is directing the next Planet of the Apes movie because he did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. That's not a spec. That's a development deal for an assignment, and of course he's directing. So as you can see, most of the big films that come out are all assignment work that's been developed. It's not a spec that came out of nowhere. So I think you might want to rethink the process. If you're going to sit down to write one of those tentpole movies, you may as well, in my opinion, you should probably sit down and write something that is a calling card that shows your unique vision and what you want to say and the passion, in your work. What separates you from another writer is your voice, is your unique ability, is your point of view on something. And a smaller film, yes, might not be in 5,000 theaters and all the glory of, A-list, but do you want to have a movie produced or not? I've been blessed the last 10 months. 2 of my films, my last 2 assignments, have been produced and will be coming out in the next 6 months. Both of them are distributed and will be premiered on television and internationally. So, that for me hasn't happened in a few years, to have 2 movies in 10 months, but also I've had other films that I've written on assignment that went away into development hell. They're production ready, but for some reason that's out of my control as the writer, did not go on to production. Budget problems with the company. The company decides to go a different direction and they're not making thrillers anymore, or the international marketplace has changed where they're not making a natural disaster movie, or the actor they wanted fell out and the financing went with him or her. All these factors. But the important thing is to get paid to sit down and write, when you're working professionally, because your time is valuable if you're getting paid or you're not. So why not get paid for it as a professional? So what I'm saying is put your specs in perspective. Especially, I wanted to have the rant today about specs because I just received the email and the Scoggins report for 2015. 46 screenplays have sold. 7 of those scripts originally went out in 2014. So they were layovers that actually sold. They went out and then sold this year, but they had gone out in 2014. So like I said, and this says that in 2014, 90 scripts sold. So you want to talk about astronomical odds. I mean, so put your spec in perspective. Don't try to make the house payment or your rent with your next spec. It's going to take years. My spec took 7 years from fade out of the first draft to the first day of production. It could take years or it could never happen. That's why you have to put your spec in perspective. Be excited, but pull back on the idea that it's going to sell. Don't be that your motivation. Don't let that be your motivation. Let that be a motivation that script's going to get you an agent, which is going to get you work, which is going to get you a career. That spec is going to open the door by a production company or a producer, and they say, wow, that's the same tone that we like in this project we need a rewrite on, or we have a project we're developing with the same tone and we like your writing. Put that more into your mind than the sale. Spec, sale, spec, sale. It'll destroy you over the long haul. If every spec you write that you're expecting to sell, because it's gonna destroy you. It does. You know, I got out of that mindset a long time ago, and it's helped tremendously over the long haul, because every spec you write will not sell. If it does, you're a complete anomaly in Hollywood. No one's ever done that. I've sold 5 specs in a row. Put it in perspective, because if you're in this for the long haul journey, which if you're not, you should get out now, you are going to have a long haul with writing specs, and one spec is not going to do it. So you're going to be writing specs until someone pays you to write or your spec sells. So that's my point today. Follow me on Twitter at Scriptcat, also on Periscope, obviously, and I'm also on Vine. Go to my blog, My Blank Page, on WordPress. I have over 180 articles about screenwriting. And also go to my website, 5o'clockblue.net. There's information about my screenplay consulting services, my free app from Yap. It's called Screenwriting Guru. You can download the link from my website to download the app. It's not on the Apple Store. It's from Yap. You download Yap's folder and then put my app in it. And I send out script tips twice a week that are taken from my upcoming book, A Screenwriter's Journey to Success, which will be out very soon on Amazon. And like I always say, keep screenwriting and keep the faith, because in a business where there are no guarantees, the one guarantee is if you stop writing and stop believing, you're guaranteed never to have any shot at success. And you want your shot. You want to get up to the plate. And when you're up to the plate, you would better be prepared and ready with a solid spec that may not sell and probably will not sell. But that spec is your calling card. That's the example. That's the best example of your writing to date. And so don't do one draft of your spec. Craft it to the point where you believe that you're written out, you cannot write any more or make any more changes, you're completely confident with your spec until a producer, a company, a director comes on board and wants to option it or give you money and be involved in a relationship in moving forward. But until then, keep the faith, my friends. Keep screenwriting, and we will talk soon again live on Periscope. Okay, keep the faith. Ciao.